Good evening. The nations of the world are once again ganging up on Israel. The reason for it is complex, but it boils down to plain old anti-Semitism. There is a movement called the BDS movement. It has been shown just how corrupt and how hypocritical this BDS movement is. There is no call for the dismantling of the economy of Syria, Iran, ISIS, Turkey, Russia for its abuse of Chechnya. There's no call for any of the nations of Islam for how brutal they are to their own constituents. The only people who receive rebuke is Israel. So I have news for the BDSers and for the East European Union that stood by and helped Hitler murder 6 million Jews. Ultimately, you will need Israel, and Israel will not need you. It hasn't happened yet, but it will. Somewhere in the next decade, Israel will be totally self-sufficient in power and will begin to export large amounts of oil and natural gas. This may come much sooner than the end of a decade, but it's going to happen. Israel is at the cutting edge of all major technical advances. And because of this, Israel has ready customers all over the world. So, if Europe doesn't want to buy Israeli computers, there are hundreds of millions of Chinese and Indians who will. It's not a threat, it's a reality. Israel holds the key to the advancement of all technologies in the world. The economy of Israel is not yet where it's supposed to be, but eventually will reach the highest per capita, not middle, but will reach the highest per capita in the world. And the reason for that is because it says, Heim am levoded yishkein uvagoyim leyischashav. Moses says this in the last chapter of the Torah. It is a nation that stands alone and is not included in the problems of all the other nations. Now, for 2,000 years, we've been a hated minority that's been persecuted. God has given us part of our holy land back. And many people in Israel are holy people and follow God's laws. And the others, although they may not realize this, follow God's directives as far as kindness and compassion, making this world a better world. Israel will not need your investment. On the contrary, you're going to need Israel's partnership with you to develop your high-tech, your missiles, your defense systems, your early warning systems. All of those systems will require Israeli technology. And then there's energy. For over 50 years, the world has cowered to OPEC. And now the world is not cowering to OPEC. You know why? Shale oil. American shale oil can by itself produce enough oil so that America doesn't have to import any more oil. The problem is that People on the left, like Obama, prevent America from building up its own gas and oil. But there will come a day when there'll be a new administration and there won't be any need in America for OPEC's oil. And in fact, America will begin to export oil. For the amount of shale oil that is found in the United States and in Canada dwarfs the deposits that exist within Saudi Arabia. It's easier to reach the oil of Saudi Arabia. But what is happening is that as the price of oil lowers, the economies of those OPEC nations begins to stumble. The same thing will happen to the European Union, which is dependent upon others for their energy. The European Union, despite the fact that they will have a lot of options, will become more and more dependent upon Russia and more dependent upon OPEC, and their economies will suffer. Those in the West will not suffer because they will have expanded energy resources, including Brazil. So you're looking at an expanded energy resources in the Americas, a diminishing energy resources in Europe, and a smaller footprint for the economic clout of OPEC, while Israel will flourish. We have a message for the world. The world needs Israel to teach it what God wants. And what does God want? Number one, that there is a God, that someone created this world intentionally. And once you realize that there is a God, then one must pray to that God. And one must learn to love and respect and fear God's presence. Since God has created man in his image, we are prohibited from murdering one another. Murder in the name of religion is still murder. Because we have to respect each other, we must respect each other's property. Theft of others' resources is prohibited. Because we must respect each other, the other man's wife is prohibited to us. And because God wants us to procreate properly, we are forbidden from marrying or having relations with our close relatives, which will cause great problems for the children that are born. Because we must be a compassionate people, we are prohibited against destroying and killing wantonly, tearing animals and just eating them as if they were just a piece of wood. We are obligated to honor God and not to defame God. And within these statements, I have included all 7 of the Noahide commandments, which is the basis of universal law, which is fairness and justice, kindness and compassion, and truth, not BDS bluff, not hypocrisy of the European Union.